Hi, today we will be talking about the integration of APIs in Astera Centerprise. Centerprise gives the user the ability to consume REST API endpoints to connect with third-party applications to retrieve and transmit data. To configure and integrate an API, we will be working with a data flow. Here, I am using an existing project to create a new data flow. To start, drag and drop the REST connection object from the toolbox section onto the data flow. Alternatively, we can add and configure a REST connection object within a shared action file as part of the same project. As you can see in the Project Explorer, we have multiple REST connection objects created within shared action files. A REST connection object is used to establish a connection with an API to further use in creating endpoints. It also contains the common properties shared by all API endpoints. Right-click on the REST connection object and select Properties from the context menu. This will open the Properties screen. Here, we will define the base URL as well as the authentication type, which will be common to all endpoints in the API. For this use case, we will demonstrate calling APIs from the HubSpot CRM. Referring to the API documentation, we can see that HubSpot APIs work with API key authentication type. However, the REST connection object also supports the use of three other types of authentications, such as Auth2, basic authentication, and bearer token. Let's configure the API key authentication properties. It takes in a key name and key value for authenticating along with its location in the request. This is if it is going to be added as a query or a header parameter. Once done, click Next and you will be led to the Shared Parameters screen. This is where you can define query or header parameters to reuse for multiple endpoints using this connection. Once done, click Next and you will be led to the Config Parameters screen. Once the REST connection object has been configured, the REST client object will also have to be configured to make a complete endpoint. Drag and drop a REST client object from the toolbox section onto the data flow. Right-click on the REST client object and select Properties from the context menu. Firstly, we will select the shared connection that we intend to use. This list shows all REST connections present in the same flow, as well as any REST connection in the same project can be used. After that, we select the HTTP method that we are going to use. For our use case, we have selected the GET method. We now provide our intended API resource as contacts, which will be appended to the base URL. Note that any path or URL parameters should also be defined as part of the resource, which will then auto-populate in the parameters list. For this method, the content type option has been disabled since a GET call does not require a request body. Once done, click Next. Here, you can define any parameters to be used with the endpoint. It can either be a URL, query, or header parameter. It can also override any inherited parameter from the REST connection. After defining a default value, if any, we will click Next and head to the output layout screen. This is used to define the expected response layout from the API call. Here, we will select the option to run the request. An actual API call will be sent based on the input parameters defined, and the layout will be built automatically based on the response received. Once done, click Next and you will be led to the pagination screen. You can configure pagination supported by the API server to make sequential pagination calls as the defined settings. We will keep it as none for now. Click OK and the REST client object will be configured. If we expand the input and output nodes, we can see these options. For the input node, we have a parameters field available. Since we provided one query parameter, we can see it within the node. Had we provided a header parameter, we would have seen a second option here. In the output node, there is another node present by the name of response info. We can see these fields inside it mapped once we preview the output. They provide information regarding status codes as well as content and much more. Now we will preview the REST client object, which sends a request and returns a response upon running. As you can see in the preview window, the API has been successfully called. The response info node shows the complete URL that was requested along with the status code and the response content returned from the API. This content is then parsed according to the output JSON layout we have defined in the REST client object that you see in the following JSON body node. This data can then be used in an integration process. As you can see in the Project Explorer, we have an example flow present. It makes a GET API call and processes the response received and writes it to this destination here. In this case, we are using the GET method for contacts alongside using the method of cursor pagination. While we use the GET method for our use case, Centerprise supports other HTTP methods as well, including POST for data creation, PUT and PATCH for updating and delete. As you can see in the REST API browser, we have various types of HTTP method endpoints available, each with its own configuration. In Centerprise, you can also import open API definitions and view consolidated endpoints for an API in the REST API browser, including multiple endpoints present, each set with a different set of request and response, all sharing the same connection. You can simply drag and drop to use pre-configured APIs in your flow. For more information, please check out the link in the description. This concludes our discussion on API integration in Astera Centerprise. To learn more about the tool, please visit our documentation site. Thank you for watching this video.